Have you ever wondered what actually happens during an initial therapy session? I'm going to give you an inside look into the process, including what you can expect and what your therapist's goals are. My name is Thomas Winterman, and I'm a licensed mental health counselor who has been in private practice for more than 8 years. Let's talk therapy. Working with a licensed therapist will include paperwork that has to be done before the first session. This will include the informed consent and some basic demographic information that the therapist might need. Informed consent basically means that you are consenting to and being informed of what will happen during the therapeutic process. So people typically come to therapy because they're wanting some help with the ways that they're acting, thinking, or feeling. I know that the number one reason why people come to therapy is to seek treatment for a mental health condition. But in therapy, we have this rule of thumb that says don't treat in the first session. I know that sounds a little odd, but let me explain. The quality of the therapeutic relationship between the therapist and the client is the most reliable predictor of client outcomes. There is no established therapeutic relationship in the first session. So even though I might be spot on with my therapeutic assessments and interventions, the absence of a therapeutic relationship makes the success rate for those interventions plummet. No therapeutic relationship equals diminished returns on even the most valid intervention. A high-quality therapeutic relationship increases a greater success rate of all therapeutic interventions. Because of the importance of the therapeutic relationship on client outcomes, goal number one for me as a therapist is to try and build that relationship before I start stepping foot into treatment or intervention territory. The first session is always going to be more listening than talking for me. My second goal is to gain some understanding of the presenting problem. And the presenting problem is the reason why a person decided to come to therapy in the first place. To get some grounding for exactly what this issue is and how it's impacting the person's life, I have to really focus in on SOD5. It's an acronym. It stands for Symptoms, Onset, Duration, Frequency, and Intensity. The first thing I want to know about are the symptoms. So I'll ask a person, what's going on? What are you feeling? What's happening? And they might start to explain to me, well, yeah, I feel kind of depressed. I'm going to ask a follow-up question to that, something like, what does depression feel like for you? What happens when you get depressed? What are the symptoms? How do you know that you're depressed? That will give me some clue into exactly what these symptoms are. The next part of that puzzle is the onset. When did this start? I'm going to want to know when those symptoms began to exist for that person. Maybe it's something the person's been dealing with their whole life and they don't have a clue when it started. Maybe it started a month ago when something significant happens. These are really important diagnostic tools and things that can help me get a better understanding of what the person's dealing with. Duration means whenever the person is experiencing those symptoms, how long do they last? If you're feeling down and if you have these episodes of really low energy, I'm going to want to know how long those episodes last. The duration is another really important guiding factor for me in terms of diagnostic and intervention strategies. Frequency refers to how often it happens. So if you are feeling down and you have low motivation and a low mood, I'm going to want to know how often this goes on for you. And the last one here is intensity. I need to know whenever this comes over you, whenever you feel this, how intense is it? I know intensity is something that tends to be pretty hard to measure. It can be helpful to apply a subjective number scale to it. So I might ask somebody on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the least impactful and 10 being the most impactful, when this symptom comes over you, how intense is it? And has that intensity changed over time? Is it getting more intense, less intense, or does it kind of stay the same? This is where the majority of the first session will be spent, asking questions about the SOD so that I can better understand what it is you're experiencing and how I can help. My third goal is to understand your goals and expectations for the therapeutic process. Therapy is about you, not me. Because of this, I really need to know what your goals and expectations are, because I'm going to refer to those throughout the therapeutic process just to kind of monitor how we're doing and if we're moving in the direction you want to or not throughout the entirety of this. Those goals may evolve or change throughout the process, and that's totally normal. Asking about your goals and expectations is something that will happen pretty regularly throughout the process of therapy. If there's time left in the first session, I'm going to start asking about your medical and mental health history, including whether or not you're currently taking any medication. This is vital for me to ask because there are many medical conditions and medication side effects that might mimic mental health conditions or exacerbate some of those symptoms that might already be there. If there's not time for that history to be gathered during the first session, that's okay. We might push that one back to the second session. That's one that can actually wait because building the therapeutic relationship and trying to get a little bit of an understanding of the symptoms, onset, duration, frequency, and intensity, those are the most important things. One of the really cool things about my job is that I never really know what to expect, and these sorts of things tend to sneak up on clients as well. It's pretty common for a person to burst into tears during the therapy session, and most people are surprised by that. A lot of people walk in, they sit down, we do a brief introduction, I go over a little bit of the initial paperwork stuff, and then I get right into the question, what made you decide to make an appointment for therapy? And then boom, they're just hit with a sudden flood of emotions. Most people, when hit with those emotions, tell me that they're sorry. They apologize. They look right at me and they say, I'm sorry. I'm not usually like this. That is a wonderful opportunity for me to step in and try to normalize some of this. Most people who come to therapy come into the first session with so much that they've held in for so long that it just sort of flows out of them. It is a very, very normal thing to happen in the first session or really any therapy session. You are not broken and nothing's wrong with you. You just need a little help making some sense out of this stuff and figuring out a path forward. Most therapy sessions last right around 50 minutes, and keeping track of time is my job, not yours. So please don't feel like you have to look at the clock or make sure that we're tracking and we're on time for what we're doing, because I'm supposed to be doing that. Around minute 40 or 45, I'll start ramping down the therapy session, because the last thing I want to do is get right into minute 50 and leave a person right in the middle of some of those big emotions, because that's not fair to you. Once the session is ramped down, we go ahead and schedule the next appointment, and that's it. Congratulations, you've just completed your first therapy session.